Boko Haram Takfiri terrorists have carried out two fresh attacks in Nigeria and Lake Chad, leaving dozens of people dead. At least 65 people were killed as terrorists attacked a village on the outskirts of the city of Maiduguri. Guns and explosives were used in the raid and houses were burnt down. Elsewhere in the Lake Chad area, two separate bomb attacks left 3 more people dead and dozens injured. Boko Haram has carried out numerous attacks in Nigeria and its neighboring countries since 2009. Some 17,000 people have been killed and millions displaced since then. Crossing over to Leesburg, joined by a member of the African desk of the Executive Intelligence Review, Mr. Douglas Degroot. Thank you so much for being with us. What is it about Boko Haram Takfiri terrorists? What is their goal, you think? Is it just to create chaos, something similar like Daesh, or how do you see the agenda of Boko Haram?
I see the agenda as being one of preventing the BRICS nations from getting their feet on the ground in Africa, building infrastructure, and finally reversing the overall process that's plagued Africa, dating back to the colonial era. Since nominal independence was granted in many cases in the early 60s, early 1960s, there have been many things that have stood in the way of actual real infrastructure development, through policies of the IMF and the World Bank and so on. So with the BRICS nations coming up with their own financial mechanisms for actually getting around these imposed problems and developing Africa, that would finally allow the kind of infrastructural development you need to really develop the continent. Mm-hmm. Now I see all these developments, such as the thing called Boko Haram around Nigeria and the whole Lake Chad area, as well as Mali and other areas in West Africa, is basically kind of a permanent warfare situation being created, which is not something that comes from the minds of these various elements of Boko Haram. There's many Boko Harams, the little emirs and their little operations that's been existing with an anti-Western tinge for 100 years. But this thing, the overall organization of this process and the funneling in of weapons and so on has really, I think, is designed to undermine this BRICS initiative.
So who do you believe, sir, who do you believe is pulling the strings of Boko Haram? Who's behind this terrorist entity?
Well, I would go back to the British Empire, the old British financial empire, and of course their Wall Street allies and so on, who are the ones who, the British, of course, have very good understanding of things on the ground in Africa for years, based on their colonial experience and so on. And they're trying to prevent Russia and China in particular, along with India, from initiating this kind of turn for infrastructure development strategy in Africa. So that's where I would put the blame. There are others. The United States and the Obama administration, and even the French also, are obviously opportunistically being involved. The French are also concerned about the BRICS because they want to see Africa as their private preserve. In fact, the President Deby of Chad said at one point last summer that of all the Boko Haram supposed people they had captured, they all had French arms. So there are other things at play, but the overall top question you're getting at, it's the British financial empire and their Wall Street allies.
Thank you so much for being with us from the Africa desk of Executive Intelligence Review, Mr. Douglas Degroot.